I still remember that Monday morning like it was yesterday. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the parking lot into a maze of puddles that reflected the grey sky above. I paid the taxi driver, thanking him quietly as I grabbed my purse and laptop bag. The moment I stepped out, I saw him. Mr. Henderson was standing near his usual parking spot, holding his briefcase over his head as a makeshift umbrella. He'd just gotten out of his black Mercedes, and he was staring at me with this look of confusion. I felt my stomach drop even before he said anything. "Jennifer." His voice carried across the parking lot, despite the rain. "Why did you come in a taxi today? What happened to the car we gave you for your promotion?" I opened my mouth to answer, my mind racing through possible explanations that wouldn't make me sound irresponsible or ungrateful. But before I could form a single word, I heard another voice behind me. "My mom uses that car now. Derek." My husband. He'd walked up with his usual Monday morning coffee from the shop across the street, smiling like he'd just made the most reasonable statement in the world. His tone was casual, friendly even, as if he'd simply mentioned what he had for breakfast. Mr. Henderson went completely quiet. I watched his expression shift from confusion to something else, something I couldn't quite read. His jaw tightened. The rain kept falling around us, but the silence between the three of us felt heavier than the storm. I should probably explain how I got to that moment, standing soaked in a parking lot while my boss and my husband stared at each other. It didn't happen overnight. Nothing ever really does, I suppose. 6 months earlier, I'd been on top of the world. After 8 years of working at Henderson & Associates, staying late to perfect presentations, bringing in clients that other people had given up on, answering emails at midnight, I finally got the promotion I'd been dreaming about: marketing manager. My own office, with windows that actually opened. A 20% salary increase. And the car. I remember the day Mr. Henderson handed me the keys to that silver Honda Accord. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was mine. Well, the company's, but assigned to me for my work. He'd smiled warmly and told me I'd earned it through dedication and excellence. I'd felt so proud driving it home that first day, imagining all the client meetings I'd drive to, the confidence it would give me. Derek had been happy for me too, at first. We'd gone out to dinner to celebrate, and he'd posted a photo of us on social media with a caption about being proud of his wife. His mother, Patricia, called that evening to congratulate me, though I noticed she spent most of the conversation talking about her own career as a school principal before she retired. Patricia had been living with us for about a year at that point. She'd shown up one Saturday afternoon with 3 suitcases and tears in her eyes, explaining that her rent had gone up and she couldn't afford her apartment anymore on her pension. Derek had immediately insisted she stay with us, and I'd agreed because that's what you do for family, right? You help them when they need it. Except Patricia's financial troubles seemed selective. She couldn't pay rent, but she could afford weekly trips to the salon for her hair. She needed to save money. But she had fresh shopping bags from department stores every other week. I didn't say anything because Derek got defensive whenever I questioned his mother's situation. It was easier to stay quiet. The car became an issue about 2 months after I got it. Patricia started complaining about taking the bus to her book club meetings. The bus was too crowded, too slow, too unpredictable. She had a doctor's appointment across town and didn't want to deal with public transportation. She needed to visit her friend in the suburbs, and the bus route was complicated. Derek approached me one evening while I was cooking dinner. "Honey, would it be okay if Mum borrowed your car tomorrow? Just for a few hours. You could carpool with Nina, right?" I'd hesitated. The car was technically company property, given to me for work purposes, but Patricia was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, looking hopeful and a little sad. And Derek had that expression he got when he was about to accuse me of being difficult. So I'd said yes. One day turned into 1 day a week, then 3 days a week, then almost every day. Patricia would take the car in the morning, promising to have it back by noon, but she'd return it at 5 or 6 in the evening, long after I needed it for work. I started taking taxis to client meetings, using rideshare apps, asking Nina for rides. The expenses added up, but Derek said I was being selfish for complaining about helping his mother. I tried to talk to him about it several times. I remember one particular night, about 3 weeks before that rainy Monday. I'd had an important presentation for a potential major client, and I'd specifically told Patricia the night before that I needed the car. The next morning, she'd taken it anyway. When I called her, she said she'd forgotten and was already at her friend's house an hour away. I'd shown up to that meeting 20 minutes late because I had to wait for a taxi during rush hour. The client wasn't pleased. I'd still managed to salvage the presentation, but the whole experience left me shaken and embarrassed. That night, I tried to explain to Derek how serious it was. I almost lost that client today because I didn't have reliable transportation. The car was given to me for work, not for personal use. He'd looked at me like I'd suggested something cruel. "It's just a car, Jennifer. Mum needs it more than you do. She doesn't have a job to pay for taxis every day. You do. Besides, we're married. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours, right? That includes helping my mother." I'd wanted to point out that the car wasn't actually mine or his. It belonged to the company. I'd wanted to say that his mother going to bingo and shopping wasn't the same as me needing transportation for work. But the look on his face stopped me. Derek hated conflict, especially anything that involved his mother. If I pushed too hard, he'd shut down for days, sleeping on the couch and giving me the silent treatment until I apologized. So I'd swallowed my frustration and told myself it was temporary. Patricia would get back on her feet eventually. Derek would see reason. Things would get better. They didn't get better. They got worse. And that Monday morning in the rain, standing in the parking lot with Mr. Henderson staring at Derek, and Derek smiling like nothing was wrong, I realized that my silence had led us here. To this moment where my professional reputation was being damaged because I'd been too afraid of being called selfish to set boundaries in my own marriage. Other employees were starting to arrive, slowing down as they walked past us, sensing that something significant was happening. I felt exposed, humiliated, caught between my husband and my boss, with no good explanation that would make any of this sound reasonable. Mr. Henderson finally spoke, his voice measured and calm, but carrying an edge I'd never heard before. "Derek, Jennifer, I'd like you both to come to my office. Now, please." The walk to Mr. Henderson's office felt like it took forever, even though it was just across the lobby and up one flight of stairs. Derek walked slightly ahead of me, his coffee still in hand, his posture relaxed, like we were just heading to a casual meeting. I felt sick to my stomach. Mr. Henderson's office was on the second floor, with large windows overlooking the parking lot we'd just left. He gestured for us to sit in the 2 chairs across from his desk, then closed the door firmly. The click of it shutting made my heart race faster. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he stood by the window for a moment, looking out at the rain, his hands clasped behind his back. When he finally turned to face us, his expression was serious but controlled. "I'd like a clear explanation of what's happening with the company vehicle assigned to Jennifer," he said, looking directly at Derek. Derek shifted in his chair, and I noticed his easy smile had faded just slightly. "Well, Mr. Henderson, it's really quite simple. My mother has been staying with us, and she needed reliable transportation. Since Jennifer and I live together and work at the same company, it made sense for us to share the car as a family resource." Jennifer has other options for getting to work, and my mother doesn't. We were just being practical. The way he said it made it sound so logical, so reasonable, like I was being included in a decision we'd made together, when the truth was, Derek had simply told me what was happening and made me feel guilty every time I objected. Mr. Henderson's gaze shifted to me. Jennifer, did you agree to this arrangement? The question hung in the air. I could feel Derek's eyes on me, could almost hear his thoughts, warning me not to make him look bad. But I also felt the weight of Mr. Henderson's disappointment, the knowledge that I'd violated the terms of my company benefits package. I was trying to help family, I said carefully, my voice quieter than I intended. But I know it wasn't the proper thing to do with company property. Mr. Henderson nodded slowly, then turned his attention back to Derek. The vehicle was assigned to Jennifer specifically for her role as marketing manager. She has client meetings, site visits, and other professional responsibilities that require reliable transportation. The car is not a family vehicle. It's a company asset tied to a specific employee and a specific job function. Derek's jaw tightened. With all due respect, sir, Jennifer is my wife. We live in the same household. It seems inefficient for the company to provide her with a car that sits unused while my elderly mother struggles with public transportation. The car wasn't sitting unused, Mr. Henderson said, his voice taking on a sharper edge. It was meant to be used by Jennifer for work purposes, and from what I understand, there have been instances where Jennifer was unable to attend meetings on time because the vehicle wasn't available to her. My face burned. He knew about the late arrival to the client meeting. Someone must have mentioned it. Or maybe he'd noticed it himself. I felt embarrassed and exposed. I remembered that meeting so clearly, how I'd rushed in with apologies, my hair still damp from the rain because I hadn't had time to fix it after the taxi ride. The client, Mr. Brennan, from Coastal Designs, had checked his watch pointedly when I arrived. I'd spent the first 10 minutes of the presentation trying to recover from that bad first impression, overcompensating with enthusiasm and detail. Later that evening, when I'd gotten home exhausted and frustrated, Patricia had been sitting on our couch, watching television, with a shopping bag from an expensive boutique at her feet. She'd used my car to go shopping, while I was scrambling to salvage an important client relationship. Derek had found me crying in our bedroom that night. But instead of comforting me or acknowledging the problem, he'd sighed and said, "You're always so stressed about work. Maybe you're taking this promotion too seriously. Mum needed to pick up a gift for her friend's birthday. It's not like your meeting was life or death." Sitting in Mr. Henderson's office now, I realized how many times Derek had minimized my career, my stress, my needs. It was always about what his mother needed, what made sense for his mother, what would make his mother happy. Mr. Henderson continued, addressing Derek with unmistakable firmness. "This matter will be reviewed by HR formally. You work in that department, Derek, so you should understand better than most that company property has specific use guidelines. Jennifer, I'm instructing you to ensure the vehicle is back in your possession by end of day today. For work purposes only. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," I said quickly. Derek's face had turned red. He nodded stiffly, but didn't say anything. "You're both dismissed," Mr. Henderson said, returning to his desk and opening his laptop, effectively ending the conversation. Derek walked out of the office quickly, and I followed, my legs feeling weak. In the hallway, he finally turned to look at me, and the anger in his eyes made me take a step back. "We'll talk about this later," he said through gritted teeth, then walked away toward the HR department without another word. I stood there for a moment, trying to collect myself. My hands were shaking. Nina appeared at the end of the hallway, clearly having been watching for me. She rushed over, her dark eyes full of concern. "What happened?" she whispered urgently. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak without crying. Nina linked her arm through mine and guided me toward the stairs. "Come on. Let's get you some coffee." We went to the break room on the 3rd floor, away from most of the morning crowd. Nina made me sit down while she prepared 2 cups of coffee, then sat across from me at the small table. "Jennifer, talk to me. What's going on with the car?" So I told her. Not just about the meeting with Mr. Henderson, but everything. How Patricia had been using the car more and more frequently. How Derek made me feel selfish every time I needed it for work. How I'd been spending my own money on taxis and ride shares while Patricia drove my company car to shopping centers and lunch dates. Nina listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail I shared. When I finished, she reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Jennifer, this isn't okay. None of this is okay." "I know," I whispered. "But she's Derek's mother. She's family." "Family doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm," Nina said firmly. "And Derek should be protecting you, not throwing you under the bus to make his mother comfortable." "Did you hear what he said to Mr. Henderson? He made it sound like this was a joint decision, when I know for a fact you've been stressed about this for weeks." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from Derek. "You made me look like a fool in front of the CEO. My mother is family. I can't believe you didn't defend us." I showed the text to Nina, whose mouth dropped open. "Defend them? Jennifer, you barely said anything. Mr. Henderson is the one who called out the problem." She was right, but it didn't change how I felt. Guilty. Anxious. Like I'd betrayed my husband by not lying to my boss. The knot in my stomach tightened as I wondered what would be waiting for me when I got home that evening. I made it through the rest of that Monday somehow, though I couldn't tell you what I actually accomplished. My mind was spinning in circles, replaying the meeting with Mr. Henderson, reading Derek's angry text over and over, dreading the moment I'd have to go home. At 4:30, I forced myself to walk down to the HR department. I needed to get the car keys from Derek so I could take the car home as Mr. Henderson had instructed. The department was busy with the usual end-of-day activity, people wrapping up tasks and getting ready to leave. Derek was at his desk, typing furiously on his keyboard. He didn't look up when I approached. "Derek," I said softly, "I need the car keys." He kept typing for a few more seconds, making me wait, then finally reached into his desk drawer and pulled out my keys. He dropped them on the desk without looking at me. "Mum left it in the parking lot an hour ago. There's something you should know about, but I guess you'll see for yourself." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "Just go look at it," he said, turning back to his computer screen. I picked up the keys with trembling fingers and walked back through the building, down to the parking lot. The rain had stopped, but everything was still wet and grey. I found my silver Honda in the spot where it should have been all along, and my heart sank when I saw it. A long, deep scratch ran from the driver's side door all the way to the back panel. The metal was gouged, the paint scraped away in an angry line. And the front bumper had a noticeable dent, the kind that comes from backing into something solid. I stood there staring at the damage, feeling tears prick at my eyes. This company car that had been pristine 3 months ago, that I'd been so proud to receive, was now scarred and dented. I walked around it slowly, documenting the damage with my phone camera from multiple angles. This wasn't something I could hide or ignore. I drove home carefully, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw Patricia through the front window, sitting on the couch talking on her phone. She was laughing about something. Derek's car was already there, which meant he'd left work right after our brief interaction. Inside, the atmosphere was ice cold. Derek was in the kitchen, making himself dinner. Just himself. Usually, he'd ask if I wanted anything. or we'd cook together. Tonight, he didn't even acknowledge me when I walked in. Patricia ended her phone call and looked at me with raised eyebrows. Well, if it isn't the person who got my son in trouble at work today. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Patricia, what happened to the car? There's a large scratch and a dent. She waved her hand dismissively, like she was brushing away a fly. Oh, that. I bumped into a pole in the parking lot at the grocery store. These compact spaces are ridiculous. The car is too sensitive anyway, barely any room to maneuver. It's not a small bump, Patricia. It's significant damage. I have to report this to Mr. Henderson tomorrow. Derek came out of the kitchen with his plate of food. And I'm sure you're just thrilled about that, aren't you? Another chance to run to the boss and make our family look bad. That's not fair, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't ask for any of this. You're the one who told Mr. Henderson your mother was using the car. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Your face said everything. Derek sat down at the dining table, next to his mother. You stood there looking like a victim when all we've done is try to help my mother during a difficult time in her life. Patricia nodded, her expression wounded. I never asked to be a burden, Jennifer. When Derek offered to let me stay here, I thought it was because we were family. I didn't realize I'd be treated like an inconvenience. I felt the familiar guilt creeping in, the sense that I was the unreasonable one. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the scratch on the car that I'd have to explain to my boss. Maybe it was Derek's text calling me disloyal. Maybe it was just that I'd finally reached my limit. The car was given to me by the company for work, I said firmly. It's not a family car, and now it's damaged, and I'm the one who's going to be held responsible for it. Derek's fork clattered against his plate. It was an accident. Accidents happen. You're acting like Mum crashed it on purpose. I'm not saying it was on purpose, but she shouldn't have been using it at all. Mr. Henderson made that very clear today. Patricia stood up abruptly, pressing her hand to her chest, like she was having palpitations. I can't listen to this anymore. Derek, I told you this would happen. She's been waiting for an excuse to kick me out since the day I moved in. I'll start packing my things. I never wanted to be somewhere. I'm not welcome. She walked toward the guest room with dramatic slowness, and Derek immediately jumped up to follow her. Mum, wait! Don't say that! He turned back to glare at me. Are you happy now? I stood there alone in the living room, feeling like I'd just been hit by a wave. This was the pattern, the same cycle that happened every time I tried to set any kind of boundary. Patricia would play the victim, Derek would rush to comfort her, and I'd be left feeling like a villain for having basic needs or expectations. My phone buzzed. It was Nina. How did it go? Are you okay? I texted back. Car is damaged. Patricia hit something. Derek is furious at me. His mum is threatening to leave and making me feel guilty. Nina's response came immediately. Get out of there. Come stay at my place tonight. Seriously. I looked toward the guest room, where I could hear Derek's low voice murmuring comfort to his mother. Neither of them had asked if I was okay. Neither of them had apologized for the damage to the car. Neither of them seemed to care that I was the one who'd face consequences at work tomorrow. I went to our bedroom and quietly packed an overnight bag, some clean clothes for work, my toiletries, my laptop. Derek didn't even notice me leaving. I walked out the front door, got in the scratched car, and drove to Nina's apartment across town. She opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a tight hug. Come on, I ordered Thai food. You're going to eat, and then you're going to tell me everything. Nina's apartment was small but cozy, the kind of place that felt safe and warm the moment you walked in. She had candles lit on the coffee table and had already set out plates for the Thai food that arrived 10 minutes after I did. I sat on her couch with a container of pad thai, and for the first time all day, I felt like I could actually breathe. Okay, Nina said, settling in next to me with her own food. Start from the beginning, not just today, everything, so I told her. About how Patricia had moved in a year ago with her story about financial troubles, but how she never seemed to actually be struggling. About how she'd taken over our guest room, then started spreading into other spaces. My home office became her sitting room. Half the living room closet became hers. She'd used my expensive face creams without asking, borrowed my clothes, invited her friends over without checking with me first. I told Nina about the bills, how Patricia didn't contribute to groceries even though she ate with us every night, how the water and electric bills had gone up significantly since she moved in. But Derek said it would be cruel to ask his mother for money. How I'd used part of my promotion bonus to buy Patricia an $800 coat for her birthday because Derek said his mother deserved nice things after raising him alone. Wait, Nina interrupted. Didn't Derek's father pay child support? And didn't Patricia work as a school principal for 30 years? She should have a decent pension. I nodded slowly. She does have a pension. I've seen the statements that come in the mail. It's not huge, but it's not nothing either. Definitely enough to rent a modest apartment. So where is all her money going? I thought about the shopping bags, the salon visits, the new tablet she'd bought last month, the weekend trips to visit friends. I don't know. I've never asked. Derek gets defensive if I bring up anything related to his mother's finances. Nina shook her head in disbelief. Jennifer, she's using you. They both are. I wanted to argue, to defend my husband. But sitting there in Nina's apartment, with some distance from the situation, I couldn't find the words. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Tell me about other times Derek has chosen his mother over you, Nina said gently. The memories came flooding back. Our second anniversary, when Derek had cancelled our dinner reservations because Patricia was feeling lonely and wanted family time. The promotion celebration that Patricia had turned into a lecture about how I'd be working too much now and neglecting my duties as a wife. The time I'd had the flu and stayed home from work, and Patricia had complained all day about the noise I was making, coughing. Until I'd locked myself in the bedroom, just to avoid bothering her. There was the incident 6 months ago, when I'd mentioned wanting to try for a baby soon, and Derek had said we couldn't possibly do that while his mother was living with us, because it wouldn't be fair to bring an infant into a crowded house. When I'd suggested maybe it was time for Patricia to find her own place then, Derek had looked at me like I'd suggested abandoning a puppy on the highway. He makes me feel selfish for having needs, I admitted to Nina. Like wanting my company car for work makes me a bad person because his mother needs transportation. Like wanting some space in my own home makes me ungrateful. Like having basic expectations in my marriage makes me demanding. Nina reached over and squeezed my hand. That's not love, Jennifer. That's manipulation. I stayed at Nina's that night, sleeping on her comfortable couch. My phone buzzed periodically, with calls and texts from Derek, but I didn't answer. I needed space to think clearly without his immediate reaction influencing how I felt. The next morning, I got dressed in Nina's bathroom and headed to work early. I needed to report the car damage to Mr. Henderson before the day really started. My stomach churned with anxiety as I knocked on his office door at 7:45. "Come in," he called. I entered, and he looked up from his computer, his expression softening slightly when he saw it was me. "Jennifer, you're here early. I need to report damage to the company car," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It happened yesterday while someone else was driving it." I showed him the photos on my phone. He studied them carefully, his jaw tightening with each image. "This is significant damage." "What happened?" "My mother-in-law hit a pole in a parking lot. She told me this last night." Mr. Henderson was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him processing not just the damage, but the full situation. "The company will handle the repairs," he finally said. But Jennifer, I need to be honest with you. This reflects poorly on the responsible party, which in this case is you, since the vehicle is assigned to you. I expected it to be treated with care. The disappointment in his voice made me want to sink through the floor. I understand, sir. I take full responsibility. Do you, though? He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression that wasn't angry, but was definitely concerned. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've been put in an impossible situation, and you're accepting blame for other people's choices. I didn't know what to say to that. He was right, but admitting it felt like betraying my marriage. The car will go to the shop today, Mr. Henderson continued. We'll arrange a rental for you in the meantime. And Jennifer, I want to be very clear about this. That rental is for your use only. If I find out it's being driven by anyone else, there will be serious consequences. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Good. Now go get some coffee and try to have a productive day. I left his office feeling humiliated and exhausted. The morning crawled by. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. Around lunch, I saw Derek in the cafeteria. He was sitting with some colleagues, laughing at something someone said. He looked completely unbothered, like everything was fine. Meanwhile, I was falling apart inside. That evening, I went back to Nina's apartment instead of going home. Derek's texts had become more frequent and more urgent. We need to talk. You can't just run away from our problems. Mum is really upset. You're being cruel. But there was one text from Patricia herself that made my blood run cold. I spoke to Derek about using that rental car next week. I have some appointments. I showed the text to Nina, who looked furious. Are you kidding me? After everything, she still thinks she's entitled to your company cars. Derek must have told her about the rental, I said quietly. What are you going to do? I looked at the text message for a long time. Then I typed a response to Patricia, my fingers shaking slightly. The rental car is for my work use only, as Mr. Henderson specifically instructed. I won't be able to help with transportation. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Within 30 seconds, my phone rang. It was Derek. I let it go to voicemail. Then Patricia called. Voicemail. Then Derek again. Nina looked at me with something like pride in her eyes. You just set a boundary. I feel sick, I admitted. That's normal. But Jennifer, you did the right thing. My phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Derek. Don't come home tonight. I can't be around someone who treats my mother this way. I stared at the message, and something inside me shifted. He wasn't asking if I was okay. He wasn't concerned about the stress I was under at work. He wasn't acknowledging that his mother had damaged company property. He was punishing me for saying no. Nina, I said slowly, do you know any good apartment listings? I barely slept that night, lying on Nina's couch with my phone face down on the coffee table. Every buzz made my heart jump, but I didn't look at the messages. Nina had convinced me to silence Derek's number, at least for the night, so I could get some rest. But rest didn't come easily when your whole life felt like it was unraveling. The next morning, Wednesday, I arrived at work at 8 on the dot. I'd stopped by my house while Derek was already at work to grab more clothes and some important documents. Patricia had been there, and she'd watched me pack with this cold, wounded expression that once would have made me apologize immediately. Instead, I'd simply told her I'd be staying with a friend for a while and left before she could start a conversation. At 9:15, my phone rang with an internal call. Mr. Henderson's extension. Jennifer, could you come to my office, please? I have Gloria Martinez from HR with me. My stomach dropped. This was it. I was going to be fired, or demoted, or formally reprimanded for the car situation. I saved the document I was working on and walked slowly toward his office, trying to prepare myself for whatever was coming. When I entered, Gloria was sitting in one of the chairs across from Mr. Henderson's desk. She was a woman in her mid-50s, with kind eyes and an air of someone who didn't miss much. She smiled at me warmly. "Good morning, Jennifer. Please, sit down. This isn't what you're probably thinking." I sat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Mr. Henderson spoke first. "Jennifer, I want you to know that what we're about to discuss is not punitive toward you. Over the past few days, some concerning patterns have come to light, and we need to address them properly." Gloria opened a folder on her lap. "We've reviewed the GPS logs from your company vehicle for the past 2 months. The system tracks all of our fleet cars for insurance and maintenance purposes. What we found was quite revealing." She turned the folder so I could see. There were printed reports showing locations and times. My eyes scanned the list. Valley View Mall, on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., when I was documented as being in the office for a team meeting. Riverside Casino, 2 hours away, on a Thursday. Multiple trips to a bingo hall, hair salons, a luxury spa. These locations don't correspond to any of your work responsibilities or client meetings, Gloria continued gently. And they all occurred during business hours, when you were verifiably at your desk or in meetings here at the office. I felt my face burn with shame, even though I hadn't been the one driving. I had no idea she was going to those places. Patricia told me she was going to doctor's appointments and visiting friends. "We know," Mr. Henderson said. "The casino trip was when the damage occurred, according to our investigation. There's even a parking citation from their lot that day." Gloria leaned forward slightly. "Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Did Derek ever imply that refusing to share the car could affect your job or your standing in the company?" I thought back to all those conversations, all those little comments. He never said it directly, but he would say things like, "Let's not rock the boat at work," or "It's better to keep things smooth when we both work at the same company." He made it sound like, if I caused problems about the car, it could make things uncomfortable professionally. Gloria and Mr. Henderson exchanged a look. "That's what we suspected," Gloria said. "Jennifer, you're not the first person to raise concerns about Derek's behavior. We've had other employees mention that he uses his HR position inappropriately, making comments about people's personal lives, giving preferential treatment to his friends. The situation with your car was the most concrete example we had to examine closely." My mouth went dry. "What does this mean?" "It means Derek has been given a formal warning about misuse of his position and a failure to understand professional boundaries," Mr. Henderson explained. "He's been explicitly told that any company property assigned to you is for your use only, and any further interference will result in serious consequences for him, not you. Additionally, your mother-in-law is banned from using any company vehicles going forward." I felt tears prick my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were relief, mixed with the exhaustion of carrying this weight for so long. "Your promotion and your standing here are not in question," Mr. Henderson continued. "In fact, I'm impressed that your work performance has remained excellent, despite obvious personal stress. That speaks to your professionalism and dedication." Gloria handed me a tissue, which I accepted gratefully. "Take a moment," she said softly. After I'd composed myself, Gloria went over some additional details about documentation and resources available to me through the company's Employee Assistance Program. Then they let me return to my desk. I made it through the rest of the day somehow. I saw Derek leave early, his face stormy with anger. He didn't look in my direction. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. "Derek, I can't believe you went to management behind my back. You've destroyed my reputation at this company. Patricia, you've humiliated my son and broken up this family. I hope you're proud of yourself." Derek, again. My mother is in tears. She's talking about moving to another state because you've made her feel so unwelcome. Is this what you wanted? I read them all while sitting at Nina's kitchen table. Nina read over my shoulder and made a disgusted sound. Notice how neither of them has apologized or taken any responsibility. It's all about how you've wronged them. She was right. There was no acknowledgement of the damaged car, the misused company property, the lies about where Patricia was going, just anger that I'd somehow betrayed them by not covering for their behavior. That night, I looked at apartment listings online. Nina sat with me, helping me identify safe neighborhoods close to work. I found a small one-bedroom, about 20 minutes from the office. It was modest but beautiful, with big windows and a little balcony. I could afford it comfortably with my promotion salary. I scheduled a viewing for Saturday. Over the next few days, a strange calm settled over me. Derek continued to send angry messages that I didn't respond to. Patricia called repeatedly. But I stayed at Nina's, went to work, and started planning my exit from a marriage that had been slowly suffocating me. On Friday afternoon, Mr. Henderson called me into his office again. I went willingly this time, no longer afraid. "Jennifer, I have a proposition for you," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Please hear me out completely before you respond." I nodded, curious. "We're opening a new branch office in Riverside, about 45 minutes from here. We need someone strong to lead the marketing department there, someone I can trust to build the team and establish our presence in that market. I'd like to offer you the position of marketing director." My breath caught. Marketing director? The role comes with a significant salary increase, better benefits, your own dedicated parking spot, and a new company car that will be registered solely in your name with explicit documentation that it's for your professional use only. He paused. "There's also a relocation stipend if you choose to move closer to the new office. I'm not telling you what to do with your personal life, Jennifer, but I want you to know you have options and the company's full support."